Welcome to the Common Sense Podcast. We are reviewing the Prologue, America is Broken, from Rod Lynch's book, Common Sense for a New Golden Era.
Today, we're looking at Rod Lynch's Common Sense for a New Golden Era. Specifically, the prologue, it's called America is Broken. Kind of a bold statement right out of the gate, but Lynch really doesn't hold back on explaining why he thinks America's in trouble, or who he thinks is responsible.
Right from the beginning, he hits us with some pretty big numbers. He starts talking about a $36 trillion national debt and over $220 trillion in unfunded liabilities.
Okay, so those numbers, they definitely get your attention, but they're so huge, hard to really grasp what they mean for, everyday life, for regular people. So can you break it down for us a little bit?
Sure. Think about it like this. A national debt that big puts a lot of pressure on the economy. It can lead to things like inflation, which it means your dollar just doesn't buy as much at the store as it used to.
Makes sense.
And those unfunded liabilities, those are things like Social Security and Medicare. So basically, those are promises that the government's made. But if things don't change, there's a chance they won't be able to keep those promises.
So it sounds like these huge numbers, they actually do have some real consequences for everyone.
Yes.
Even if we don't see them every single day.
Right.
That makes his next point even more worrisome, I think. Lynch claims that 90% of federal income is already locked in, like mandatory spending.
That's right. So that mandatory spending includes things like Social Security and Medicare, and also the interest payments on that huge debt we were talking about.
So that doesn't leave a lot left over.
Exactly. It leaves only a very small amount for everything else the government needs to take care of.
Like what kind of things?
Well, things like national defense.
Okay.
And education.
Right.
Infrastructure. All sorts of things.
So basically, not a lot of wiggle room to fix problems.
Not much, no.
And Lynch goes on to make this really bold claim.
Okay.
He says every single problem in American history boils down to decisions made by politicians. Isn't that oversimplifying things a bit?
It's definitely a strong statement. And history is complicated. There are a lot of factors involved. But a lot of the challenges we see today, you can trace them back to decisions that politicians have made.
Like what?
Well, for example, think about our healthcare system, how it's set up, the rules and regulations around the environment, even something like the tax code. All those things are the results of political choices.
Okay, so it's not necessarily about placing blame. It's more about understanding that those political decisions, they have really big consequences. They shape our lives in big ways.
Exactly. Lynch's point is politicians, they should be solving these problems, not adding to them.
So they should be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Exactly.
Okay. But then he takes it a step further. He claims that politicians are using lies and manipulation to control the public. He even brings up this concept of cognitive dissonance. Can you explain what that is and how it fits into all this?
Cognitive dissonance is basically that mental discomfort we feel when we're holding on to two conflicting beliefs.
Like believing one thing but seeing something different happen.
Or when our actions don't line up with our values. It's human nature to try to resolve this discomfort. And sometimes that means rationalizing things, or even ignoring information that goes against our existing views.
So what Lynch is saying is politicians are taking advantage of this. They're giving us information that backs up what we already think, even if it's not completely true. And because of this cognitive dissonance thing, we're more likely to accept those narratives, even when the evidence says otherwise.
That's exactly his argument. He thinks politicians create stories, narratives that play on our fears, our hopes, and that triggers this cognitive dissonance, making us more vulnerable to being manipulated.
Wow. So it's like they're playing with our minds.
In a way, yes.
Making us more susceptible to their message, even if it's not entirely accurate. Yeah.
Or even truthful.
Truthful.
And it gets even more disturbing, I think, when you look at what Lynch calls the eventual reveal. He says, as time goes on, these narratives that politicians are pushing, they start to fall apart. The truth comes out.
Okay, so what happens then when people are confronted with this dissonance, the story they've been told versus what they're actually seeing?
Well, Lynch says there are two paths people can take. One is to face that truth head on. Acknowledge those inconsistencies. Start thinking for yourself. Critically evaluate information. Question those assumptions. Form your own conclusions.
So basically wake up and smell the coffee.
In a sense, yes.
Yeah.
But the other option, it's a bit more unsettling.
Unsettling how? What's the other path?
He calls it mass insanity, doubling down on that false narrative, clinging to it even tighter when evidence contradicts it.
So like burying their heads in the sand, ignoring the truth, even when it's staring them right in the face.
Exactly. And Lynch argues that this is exactly the kind of environment that allows corrupt leaders, ineffective leaders to thrive. They keep manipulating the situation, eroding trust, undermining the very foundation of our society.
It's a pretty grim picture. But he does offer some hope. He doesn't just leave us with this feeling of doom and gloom.
Oh, absolutely. His core message is actually one of empowerment. He gives a direct call to action.
Oh, it's good.
He says, read his solutions, discuss them, and stop voting for these politicians who don't deliver on their promises.
So he's not complaining. He's offering ways to fix things, empowering people to take action. I like that. It's about, I don't know, reclaiming our power as citizens, holding our leaders accountable.
That's exactly it. Recognizing that we're not helpless in the face of these challenges.
Right.
We have a voice. We can make choices that can actually shape the future of the country.
And he seems really concerned with this whole issue of lies and manipulation in politics. He even uses the term gaslighting at one point.
Yeah, gaslighting.
What exactly does he mean by that, and how does it relate to his overall argument?
Gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation. It's when someone tries to make you doubt your own sanity, your own perceptions.
Like making you question your own reality?
Exactly. It's about twisting the truth, denying facts, making you question your own memory, your judgment.
So Lynch is saying that some politicians act like abusers.
That's the parallel he's drawing. He says, by constantly repeating falsehoods, dismissing legitimate concerns, attacking anyone who questions their narratives, they're creating this atmosphere of confusion and distrust.
It's like they're trying to make us doubt our own senses, our ability to tell what's true.
Exactly. And in that kind of environment, it becomes easier for them to control the narrative, manipulate people for their own gain.
That's kind of scary. So how do we break free from that? How do we protect ourselves from this kind of manipulation? How do we start making more informed decisions?
Lynch emphasizes critical thinking skills, what's often called media literacy.
So it's not just about taking in information, it's about knowing how to evaluate it.
Yeah, it's about being able to analyze different sources, recognizing biases, separating fact from fiction.
Okay, so learning to ask the right question.
Exactly, and thinking for yourself.
So a more skeptical, questioning approach to all the information that's thrown at us every day.
That's right. It's a crucial skill in today's world where we're constantly bombarded with information from so many different sources.
So it's about taking a step back, looking at where the information's coming from.
Yeah.
Asking yourselves, is this believable? Does it make sense? What's the motivation behind this?
It's about becoming more conscious, more discerning about the information we consume, not just passive recipients.
Okay, so if we agree with Lynch's diagnosis, if we accept that America's facing these serious challenges, what's the solution? What are the concrete steps he suggests we take to fix these broken systems and hold our leaders accountable?
He outlines a whole series of solutions in his book, each one aimed at a different aspect of what he sees as America's decline.
I'm actually really curious to see what he has in mind.
I think you'll find his ideas both thought-provoking and potentially a bit controversial.
But now I'm really interested to dive into the solutions he offers.
Okay.
Because he doesn't just leave us with this, feeling of despair.
No, not at all. In fact, his book lays out a whole plan for what he calls a new golden era. He has some bold ideas, some might even seem radical, but they're all rooted in this belief that we can build a better future if we're willing to challenge the way things are.
So where does he start? What's the foundation of this new golden era plan?
Well, he starts with leadership.
Mm-hmm.
He says we need to completely rethink how we choose and judge our leaders. He even suggests moving away from the two-party system and looking at other models that put things like competence, integrity, a real commitment to serving the people first.
So it's not just about swapping out one set of politicians for another. It's a deeper change to our whole political culture, like rethinking what qualities we value in a leader.
Exactly. He says we need to stop focusing on just charisma or what party they belong to.
Yeah.
And start looking for people with the knowledge, the skills, the ethics to actually lead effectively.
That makes sense. But how do you even begin to make that kind of change? I mean, it seems like a huge task.
He does offer some concrete steps, like campaign finance reform to get money out of politics, term limits to stop career politicians from, holding on to power forever, and changing our elections to give voters more choice, more control over who gets elected.
Those are some big changes, and I bet there would be pushback from people who benefit from the system as it is.
Oh, he acknowledges that. But he says these kinds of big changes, they're necessary if we want to break free from this cycle of corruption and dysfunction, the stuff he thinks is plaguing our system.
Okay, so that's the leadership part. But what about those huge financial challenges we talked about?
Yeah.
The national debt, the unfunded liabilities.
Right.
Does he offer any solutions for those?
He does. He proposes restructuring our whole financial system, going back to sound monetary policies, cutting government spending, a balanced budget amendment to prevent future debt. He also wants to simplify the tax code, ease the burden on people and businesses.
Again, big changes. He's not afraid to tackle those big issues.
Nope. He thinks bold action is needed for the scale of the problems we face. And he says these reforms are crucial for economic stability and a good future for all Americans.
Okay, but his plan isn't just about politics and money. He also gets into those bigger social issues, the anxieties and divisions he thinks are tearing us apart.
He does. He talks about the importance of personal responsibility, being engaged citizens, and focusing on shared values again. He wants us to get back to civil discourse, be willing to listen to people with different views, find common ground.
So it's not just about fixing the system from the top down.
No.
It's about building a culture of responsibility and respect at the individual level.
Exactly. He thinks real change needs to happen at both levels, the individual and society as a whole. He says we need to rediscover those basic principles: unity, compassion, working together for the common good, the things he thinks we've lost in recent years.
That's a powerful message. It reminds us that in the end, the future of our country is up to us. We can't just wait for someone else to fix it. We have to get involved in shaping the world we want to live in.
I think that's one of the key takeaways from Lynch's work. It's a call to action, an invitation to be part of the change, a reminder that we all have a role in creating a better future for ourselves and for future generations.
Well said. Lynch definitely has some strong opinions. And his solutions, they're going to get people talking.
They will, but that's part of what makes his work so important. He's pushing us to think critically, to have real conversations, to be active participants in building the future we want.
So for those listening, if you're feeling kind of disillusioned or even discouraged about things, don't lose hope. Read Lynch's book. Consider his ideas. Get involved in your community. Make your voice heard. And help create the change you want to see in the world.
Like Lynch says, the future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we create. We've been through a lot with this book, Common Sense for a New Golden Era. So we'll leave you with this. If America is broken, what role are you going to play in fixing it?
Will you just sit back and watch? Or will you roll up your sleeves and help build something better?
The choice is yours.
Please comment, like, share, and subscribe to the Common Sense podcast. Then click on the link to hear our review of Chapter 1, Economy in Crisis, from Rod Lynch's book, Common Sense for a New Golden Era.